La Meca Radio presenta el show de Gemma Carrillo. De todo y para todos, con Gemma Carrillo en La Meca Radio.
Bienvenido al show de la doctora Gemma, donde siempre tratamos de mantenerlos informados, darle cosas que suceden en la comunidad que les benefician, tratar de dejar que las personas que acaban de llegar a este país, que a lo mejor vienen por razones económicas o por razones políticas, pero que comienzan una nueva vida, pues tengan esa información vital para que puedan seguir hacia adelante, para que puedan crear un mejor mañana, para que puedan ayudar a sus familias, para que se puedan ayudar a sí mismos. Y por eso siempre le damos muchos agradecimientos, muchas gracias a nuestros patrocinadores. Vamos a comenzar con The English Center. The English Center está ubicado en el 3501 Southwest 28 Street. El teléfono es el 305-445-7731. 305-445-7731. Y The English Center ya está abierto para este trimestre escolar. Comenzamos las clases el pasado lunes. Estamos muy felices de que ya las personas se hayan acercado a inscribirse, pero recuérdense que no hay excusa para aprender inglés, para hacerse ciudadano, para recibir el GED si usted lo tiene de su país, para poder mejorar sus matemáticas, su composición, sus artes, habilidades y destrezas en la computadora, para una carrera corta como cosmetología o cuidado de niños o medical billing. Unas carreras que están en alta demanda y que usted puede hacer en The English Center sin ningún problema. Lo único que tiene que hacer es acercarse y vernos. Puede llamarnos al 305-445-7731, 305-445-7731. Y siempre le decimos, recuerde, que no hay excusa para aprender. El English Center está abierto desde las 6 de la mañana hasta las 9:30 de la noche, de lunes a domingo. O sea que usted cualquier día puede ir a aprender. No deje eso para mañana. Llámenos. 305-445-7731. Y también queremos darle las gracias a nuestra patrocinadora, Liena Perdomo, dueña y propietaria de Preferred Public Adjusters. Su teléfono es 786-597-2410, 786-597-2410. A lo mejor no lo necesitan ahora, pero más adelante, a lo mejor si tienen un salidero, si tienen problemas con las ventanas, si tienen problemas con cualquier cosa, guarde ese teléfono, 786-597-2410, 786-597-2410. Y cuando llamen a Liena, díganle que vengan de parte de nosotros, del show de la doctora Gemma. Ella se va a poner muy contenta de que ustedes hayan hecho ese contacto. Y ahora le vamos a presentar nuestro invitado de hoy, Juan Martín. Mr. Martín, how are you?
I am doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to do this like a little bit in Spanish, un poco en español, un Spanglish así bien para mantenernos todos informados y para, which is normally how I do the program. I do it in English and Spanish and
Okay.
whatever comes across, it happens. But first of all, congratulations. Vamos a felicitar al señor Juan Martín, que acaba de ser nombrado como uno de los 4 finalistas, ¿oyeron bien? 4 finalistas de más de 20,000 maestros que existen en las escuelas públicas de Miami-Dade para representarnos como maestro del año. El proceso es dentro de una semana. Va a un evento donde se escoge el maestro del año que representa al distrito escolar de Miami-Dade. Y de ahí en julio, van a Orlando en Universal Studios, generalmente es donde se hace el evento, y se escoge el maestro o la maestra que va a representarnos a nivel nacional al estado de la Florida. Y después el año siguiente, en febrero, pues ese maestro ya representa a la nación, y si somos dichosos, pues nos representa a nosotros. En veces anteriores ha habido alrededor de, creo que 3 maestros del estado de la Florida que han representado a la nación. Pero de todas formas, la persona que es escogida como el maestro del año por la Florida va a la Casa Blanca, visita con el presidente, que siempre es un evento y es un highlight, ¿no? In our lives. So we are very blessed to have Juan Martín con nosotros hoy. Y queremos empezar, Mr. Martin, tell me something about you. I understand, yo sé que usted se graduó de la Universidad de la Florida, but my question was, did you ever attend New World School of the Arts, and that's how you ended up being part of University of Florida out of Miami-Dade College. How did that work? Tell me a little bit your path, su carrera como profesional de maestro de música.
Sure. Well, I began studying music first in elementary here, where I actually had my first teaching job at Kensington Park Elementary. I joined the Citrus Grove band, which is now where I'm a teacher. So I've been lucky enough to teach at the schools I've attended. From there, I went to Mass Academy in Key Biscayne, and then to Miami-Dade College, where I would transfer to New World School of the Arts and be a member of University of Florida. So that was my route of, learning music and going through all of Miami, experiencing many different ways to interact with the arts.
I figure that you had been at New World School of the Arts because I know that they're attached to Miami-Dade College.
Yes.
Están conectados a Miami-Dade College, la Universidad de la Florida, que por cierto yo tengo bueno, ya se graduó, una estudiante que that was her path. She went in through, actually, she didn't do New World School of the Arts porque ella llegó a este país sin aprender inglés en 10º grado. Que son una de las cosas que a mí me gusta decirle a los oyentes. No importa when you get here, no importa cuándo es que usted puede entrar en este sistema del sistema escolar, del sistema de los Estados Unidos. It doesn't matter. If you have the talent, if you have the willingness, si tú quieres hacerlo, lo vas a lograr. Y esta muchachita particularmente llegó a este país cuando tenía 17 años, sí que fue a 10º grado, hizo 10º, 11º y se graduó de high school. Claro, naturalmente, no pudo tener la oportunidad de participar en New World School of the Arts, aunque ella se graduó de una escuela de nosotros, de Miami-Dade County Public Schools, que tiene un programa de música bastante fuerte, Arthur and Polly Mays, que está all the way in the South. So she was able to perform with the band and she was able to practice her craft. Claro, cuando ella se gradúa, quiere seguir con su música. Y la única forma que podía hacer eso era yendo a Miami-Dade College, hizo su audición, la aceptaron y se graduó de la Universidad de la Florida con su preparación en música, which is what she wanted. So I'm glad that you follow the same path, and that's, I see that de verdad que la educación que da Miami-Dade County Public Schools, this education is first class beyond. Déjame hacerte una pregunta, señor Martín. I was reading your bio, que impresionante, su biografía, su trayectoria es just beautiful. Estaba leyendo una cosa que usted utiliza en el salón de clase que se llama The Time Machine. Tell us a little bit about that, about the time machine. Tell us a little bit about the time machine.
Well, I've always had a love for music and history. And even when I started at Citrus Grove as a student, I had a very special teacher named Mr. Castle. And Mr. Castle pulled me out in 7th grade into an advanced history course and kind of really gave me a passion for history then. And it even changed my course as a student, I think. He really inspired me to have a lot of integrity in my academics. And I kept that love for me, or that love for music, throughout my life, and the love for history throughout my life and my studies. Eventually, when I became an elementary music teacher, I wanted to find a way to integrate history and context into the songs that I would teach my students. Initially, the concept was created by just showing the Star Wars warp speed video in my class. So I would just, put the video when they kind of go into warp speed together in space, and the students would grab the tables and shake them. I say, okay, well, we're going back in time. I would turn the lights off and they would get really excited. It was fun. But over the summer, I thought, maybe I can take this to the next level. And I started integrating lights, special effects, theater, video, and little by little, the time machine began taking a life of its own. And it developed into this new way to not just talk to students about musical periods and composers of the past, but to go back in time and actually meet them, which I think is much more substantial and interactive and motivational.
So really, this is really an interdisciplinary experience. Not only are they learning their music, they're learning their notes, they're learning their tempos, pero también están aprendiendo en qué periodo en la historia pertenece esa pieza que están interpretando.
Absolutely. I even use it as a tool to reach out and give the lesson more purpose. For example, in the most recent one I did, I taught them about the 1849 California gold rush. And the lesson was modeled after them being junior musicologists, traveling back in time, meeting a real gold miner from the period, and asking him questions to be able to interpret an old folk song as if it was played today. You know, so it isn't just going back, but there's always a purpose. There's a mission involved, which I think is a great way to give purpose to a lesson and make it so much more exciting. It's not just a word problem that you solve and you get to the end to. There's a purpose, there's a mission, there's an idea and a motivation behind the performance.
Es que no tengo ni palabras, because that is exactly what teaching is all about. It's not, because a lot of times cuando los niños vienen a casa te dicen, pero yo no sé para qué yo estoy aprendiendo álgebra, o yo no sé, chemistry, who cares? No. Y al contrario, todo en la vida uno lo usa, no necesariamente a lo mejor de la manera que se ha presentado, and I'm sure that happens to you. What do they tell you when you present these different methods? La música en forma diferente. ¿Qué te dicen los estudiantes cuando tú le presentas las músicas así?
I have a mix of responses. I have younger students who ask me, Mr. Martin, is it real? You know, are we really traveling to the past? The older students obviously know that it's for fun, but coincidentally, most of them are still very excited for it. They still ask me for it all the time. They say, Mr. Martin, when is the next time machine? You know, when's it coming? Not very different than going to like a Disney ride or a Universal Studios ride. You know it's not real, but there's something beautiful about being a kid at any age and living in the fantasy for that moment in time. And I think in general, for most students, it creates a sense of excitement because I use it to spin off the actual hands-on activity that will happen. For example, in another time travel lesson, we traveled back in time to meet George Frederick Handel, who's famous for writing the Messiah oratorio. So he wrote a lot of oratorios during the Baroque period. And what I did is I used artificial intelligence to generate a fake oratorio that he didn't finish. And at the end of the time machine led us to an artifact in the room where we found the old documents. And the lesson then became, well, let's help him complete this unfinished oratorio. So it's, I think it's also reaching out to human nature and the things that all people are attracted to: mysteries, legends, curiosity, the things that are irresistible to people.
Increíble, increíble. Me imagino estando en tu salón de clase, thinking, okay, ¿qué es lo que se va a inventar nuevo? ¿Qué es lo que viene después? Because this is algo que solamente en la imaginación uno puede crear lo que en realidad está sucediendo y al mismo tiempo están aprendiendo. Mr. Martin, let me ask you, what level of music do you teach? I mean, I know that you teach kindergarten hasta octavo grado, pero ¿qué nivel? Beginning, intermediate? How does that work in your... give me an example of your schedule, el horario que usted tiene diariamente, how it breaks down.
Well, I have a lot of variety. My school is in the heart of Little Havana. So we have students of all types in our school, those who are very proficient in English, those who are just arriving, many who are just arriving, a lot of ELL students. And we also have a big special needs program. So my day varies from second to fifth grade in all types of levels and needs, which is, it's of course a challenge because you have to constantly alter your approach and learn what every class needs. But it's also been a great way to teach me how to reach all types of people.
Wow, increíble. Estamos hablando con el señor Juan Martín, que es uno de los finalistas para el premio del Maestro del Año del Sistema Escolar de Miami-Dade County Public Schools. El evento se celebrará en un par de semanas y él es uno de 4 finalistas que está tratando de adquirir este honor. Una pregunta, señor Martín. El año pasado, usted fue el maestro novato del año, because it was your first year teaching. Y este año, you're up to Teacher of the Year, el maestro del año del distrito. What's the segue? How do you deal with, spending all this time? Porque es tiempo. Hay que prepararse, hay que completar esas aplicaciones, la solicitud, hay que hacer visitas a diferentes lugares. How do you deal with that? Having a classroom y teniendo poco tiempo para poder prepararse para todas estas cosas.
That's an interesting question. I think that's something I'm still learning how to do. It is a big challenge to take everything on and have the push to keep the same level of quality all the time. I think integrity is very important to me, and my priority is always keeping a very high quality of class for my students. I want my lessons to be consistent in that, despite the other arrangements or responsibilities that I'm taking on at this moment. I think the best way I can describe it is, while it is a lot, I am trying to just soak in the moment, because it's a unique moment in my life and in time to be recognized for something like this. So while it is challenging, I'm just trying to work hard and soak it in and say, well, I'm here. That's really cool.
Exactly, así mismo. Es que you have to take it day by day. ¿Qué más se va a hacer si no poder hacer lo que uno tiene que hacer sin dejar la responsabilidad que uno tiene a los estudiantes, a los otros, tus otros colegas que trabajan contigo? And just keep it going. And, it's really difficult, especialmente when you're in that classroom. That's it. It's not like you can reach out to somebody or como hacen en la televisión en uno de los concursos, eso que you have a lifeline. You don't have a lifeline. You're there by yourself. And it's difficult to try to come up with what needs to get done. And like you said, especialmente since you have, como tienes estudiantes que they have different levels, you have recent arrivals. I know exactly where Citrus Grove is, and está en la 22 Avenida y casi las 7 calles del Norwest. So,
Right.
Es una población que cambia constantemente, de personas recién llegadas, personas que llevan tiempo en el vecindario, y las edades también, esa edad de kindergarten a 8º grado son edades muy difíciles. Pero I'm sure that you're, juggling all those balls in the air and just doing fine sin dejar que nada se caiga y todo hacia adelante. Let me ask you something, and I'm sure que they've asked you that 50 times, pero I'm going to ask you again. What was it that, with all your background in music, me explicaste que viniste de las escuelas públicas, desde Kensington Park hasta que eventualmente te transferiste para New World School of the Arts, y tenías esa música siempre contigo, o sea que es no es un hobby, la música becomes part of your life, porque como tienes la disciplina de practicar, la disciplina de ensayar, todas esas cosas que tienes que hacer, ya eso es parte de tu DNA, I would say. What was it that made you become a teacher? ¿Por qué te decidiste hacerte maestro?
That's a good question. I think there are many routes that took me there. Initially, it was an interest in music, and that started as a kid listening to pieces of music that really gave me a lot of passion. I think that started with John Williams for me. I would hear the music of Star Wars. When I was young, Jurassic Park had just come out, and those scores really inspired me a lot. I would dream of them when I was walking in the hallways and listening to things. And I would say, well, how would I write a film score? I was really inspired by the idea of being a composer. I would go in and out throughout my life, having different types of interactions with music. And when I started college at Miami-Dade, my first semester was actually as an education major. So I did one semester studying education. And then I realized that I could study music and be a teacher anyway.
Ujú.
I said, well, I just need to pass the tests and things like that. And I said, well, what I really have a deep passion for is that. So I, dove into composition and studying music at New World School of the Arts and involving myself in the community as a composer as much as I could. And during that time, especially through my community involvement, I realized that I really did enjoy sharing music with a lot of people because I did it everywhere. I also worked for Apple for about 5 years. And while working at Apple, all I would do is talk to my employees about music, or my friends, my coworkers. I would say, hey, let me show you this song. Let me tell you this story about a composer. Let me tell you something I learned. And I kept thinking about it throughout that time. And I thought, I think I would be really good at sharing this with children. I think I could connect with them. I think I could relate my passion for the arts and for creativity with them. And then eventually I got an opportunity at my home school, at the school I went to, which was a dream. So I think it really started with music, then through community, and then finding out that I really had a passion of sharing with others.
Yeah, music opens. Music, yo siempre digo que la música es el lenguaje internacional, porque no importa que tú hables la lengua, en el caso de interpretations que tengan words, ¿no? Pero lo que es la música, la melodía, the beat, that gets people going, man, always. And if people, even people who might not be friends, las personas se convierten amigos a través de la música. Es algo increíble la música. Abre puertas you were talking about that. I wasn't going to ask you this, pero I mean, it wasn't one of the things that I noted, pero estaba hablando de John Williams, que yo me pongo a escuchar la música de John Williams y yo digo, ¿cómo a este hombre se le ocurrió esa misma música de Star Wars? How did he come up with that? Que es una cosa que es como si it was like the music was created for the movie. O sea, las cosas que están pasando en la película, la música está como, it was like they were twins, o sea que no hay ningún tipo de separación. Y recientemente vi la película de esta Maestro, que es de la historia de Leo Bernstein. Have you seen that movie? Tell me a little bit, what do you think about it?
I haven't seen it yet, but I am a huge Leonard Bernstein fan. I do want to see it. I find him to be very inspirational. I love West Side Story. And I love all his interpretations as a conductor. He was an incredible man, an incredible talent who was so multifaceted. In fact, when I used to host concerts in the community, and when doing that, and even actually as a teacher, a lot of what I do as a teacher, I took from him. I stole from him. I would put on YouTube, I would find his old videos where he would do shows for the youth. He would do, I think it was called Music for Young People. And he would break down masterpieces that were complex so that anybody who was not necessarily a music theorist or a composer or a musician could absorb them. And I took a lot of inspiration from him and thinking, how can I do that for young people in my neighborhood here?
Well, you haven't watched the movie, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. Pero la película, aunque no está concentrada en how he makes his music, it does. porque ay, ¿cómo se llama? Bradley Cooper,
Cooper, yeah.
que es el que hace el papel. He's also the director, él es el que dirige la película. Y él habló con la familia de Bernstein y se basa mucho en lo que es la parte familiar. But when you think about it, sobre todo cuando la persona tiene un talento así tan grande y es una cosa tan que se le sale por los poros. O sea, if you were born to be a musician, you were going to be a musician. No importa si te quitan todos los instrumentos, si te cierran los oídos, you're going to be a musician. You're going to be a musician because eso está en tu sangre, eso es así. No puedes prevenirlo. Pero la familia le ayuda también en las composiciones, porque él tiene un sistema para componer, y eso mismo que tú dices de esos conciertos que él hace para the youth, throughout the movie, tú ves cuán generoso es él con las personas que vienen a verlo como un conductor. And that really, watch the movie so you see what I mean. It's really, a mí me gustó la película, me gustó muchísimo. It's not for young kids, so I don't recommend that you show it to your students. Pero la película está bien, muy inspiradora. I really found it very, very, uplifting, and it was great. Yo le encontré que estaba pero muy buena la película.
Yeah, I would definitely check it out. Definitely.
Déjame hacerte una pregunta un poquito más de today's, como estamos en los composers. I'm sure you've heard about Gustavo Dudamel, de Venezuela.
The conductor, right? Gustavo
Right.
Dudamel. Yes.
Venezolano, sí. He's going to be, él va a estar a cargo de la Metropolitan de Nueva York a partir del 2025 o 2026, I can't remember exactamente, but it's coming up. And él es otra persona que he always worries about the kids. And he has, en Los Ángeles tiene una orquesta que se llama YOLA, que es Youth Orchestra LA, Los Ángeles, ¿no?
Right.
Que me imagino que se llevará lo mismo también para Nueva York. Y muchos de nuestros grads de New World School of the Arts han participado en ese programa durante el verano. And he is también very giving for the young people. ¿Qué es la diferencia? Cuando tú vienes a ver, esa es la diferencia. Do you see yourself? ¿Tú crees que tú puedas tener esa, o are you trying to do that with your students? A esos que tú le ves que tienen talento, de ayudarlo a que descubran lo que pueden dar y how do you do that in your classroom?
That's a good question. I think when you meet creative people, you often find they have many talents. They like making music, they like writing, they like drawing, they like acting. I find that creative people in general are attracted to the arts. And like you said before, it's something that's undeniable. You cannot deny it. You can suppress it. And some people, because of maybe their family's influence or because of a fear of failure, suppress that creative need inside of them. And they say, no, I'll do something safer. and they try not to go to it. I don't try to influence my students in any one way. But what I do try to do is give them the avenue to explore that creativity and find it, and I do it through projects. I do it through challenges. I do it in this gentle way where I say, here's something for you to figure out. You have to kind of create a place where creativity can blossom. And all of a sudden they say, oh, wow, I was able to write a song. I was able to come up with this idea. And you start finding talents you had. I mean, for example, I didn't know that I could write music at all. When I was in college, my theory teacher at Dade, Dr. Yim, a great theory teacher, he gave me a project for writing a minuet in the style of Joseph Haydn. And I dove into the project, did the best I could, and he ended up loving it. And he showed it to all his classes. And at that moment, I said, wow, like I wrote that from scratch. And it started a fever in me. And I just started writing and writing and writing. And now I write songs for my students all the time. And that happened because Dr. Yim opened up something in me through an opportunity. He didn't push me into thinking I could. He didn't nudge me, you know, he just gave me these creative projects. And through that, I discovered myself. So especially at the elementary age, I want to do that. I want to give them projects and creative ventures that will build their confidence and their passion for being creative.
Efectivamente, y así es como uno aprovecha ese talento que está raw, es totally on tap, un talento que a lo mejor ni ellos mismos saben que lo tienen, poquito a poco para que se descubran a sí mismos y para que vayan aprendiendo y viendo qué es lo que ellos pueden dar. Because I always say que los maestros, the teachers are more a facilitator. You're not really, if you're doing your job right, tú no te vas a hacer tiempo lecturing and just ponerlos a escribir y a leer. No, you have to have them discover. Tienen que descubrir ese talento dentro de ellos mismos que ni siquiera saben que tienen esa creatividad. Estamos hablando con Juan Martín, uno de los finalistas del premio del Maestro del Año, que están nombrado por un antiguo maestro, Francisco Walker, se me había olvidado mencionar eso. El evento va a ocurrir dentro de un par de semanas y ahí se determinará quién es el maestro que nos va a representar a nivel estatal en el estado de la Florida. Y estábamos hablando de su historia, su background, cómo es que él llega a ser maestro, su música, su creatividad, sus influencias. Y vamos a hacer un pequeño pausa y cuando regresemos vamos a hablar con él porque él mencionó hace unos minutos algo de su participación en la comunidad y tengo entendido que él creó y fundó una asociación que todavía existe para ofrecer música a la comunidad. Vamos a hablar dentro de un minuto cuando regresemos. Seguimos hablando con Juan Martín sobre esa organización que él creó. Enseguida regresamos. Muchas personas dicen, mi hogar es mi castillo. No importa si es un efficiency, es una mansión de 25 habitaciones con piscina. Y es verdad que nuestro hogar es un castillo, porque es el lugar donde buscamos descansar y pasarla bien y separarnos de todo lo demás. Por eso, si alguna vez tiene algún problema como salideros, si hay un fuego, si tienes daño por un huracán o a lo mejor tiene algún problema de plomería, recuerde que deben llamar a Preferred Adjusting Services, que ellos le van a ayudar. Pueden llamar al 786-597-2410. Liena, ¿no es verdad?
Es correcto, nos pueden llamar al 786-597-2410 y lo podemos ayudar con salideros de agua, con tupiciones, con daños por causa del huracán, fuegos, vandalismo, moho, cualquier daño que tenga su propiedad. Lo primero que tiene que hacer es llamarnos al 786-597-2410.
Diatrio Medical Office, 11760 Bell Row en Miami. En la suite 741 tiene su consulta el doctor Enrique Fernández con todos los requisitos. La amabilidad caracteriza a sus técnicos y profesionales. En la consulta del doctor Enrique se aceptan casi todos los seguros médicos. Una característica especial del doctor Enrique Fernández es que te escucha y te dedica el tiempo necesario. No es lo mismo que la familia tenga a su médico a que tu médico te atienda como si tú fueras de su familia. 305-559-9732. Tantos pacientes no pueden estar equivocados.
Buenas tardes, gracias por regresar al show de la doctora Gemma, que llega a ustedes por cortesía desde English Center, 305-445-7731, 305-445-7731, y también por cortesía de la compañía Preferred Public Adjusters, que le puede ayudar con cualquier problema que usted tenga en su casa. Del número 786-597-2410. 786-597-2410. Y estamos hablando hoy con el profesor Juan Martín, profesor de música de la escuela Citrus Grove K-8, que está ubicada en la pequeña Habana, aquí en nuestro condado de Miami-Dade. Y él es uno de 4 finalistas, oigan bien, 4 finalistas de más de 20,000 maestros que tienen las escuelas públicas de Miami-Dade. Dentro de un par de semanas vamos a saber si él es el que se lleva el premio. El premio No es una cosa al otro mundo, creo que son como hay una cantidad monetaria como de $1,000 para el ganador, hay una cesta de regalo, creo que hay un fin de semana en un hotel, también hay un automóvil que se gana, que se le dona a una de las, en cooperación con EdFed, nuestra Credit Union, nuestro banco de los maestros, que siempre agradecemos que nos sirven como si fuera pedirle dinero a nuestros padres prestado, pero sin el sentido de culpabilidad. Pues ellos ayudan al sistema escolar a ofrecer un automóvil de gratis para el maestro ganador. Pero eso no es el punto es que eres escogido entre todos tus colegas, entre más de 20,000 personas. Estos 4 maestros, Juan Martín es uno de ellos, son escogidos para representarnos a nivel del condado y eventualmente a nivel del estado de la Florida. Pero antes de la pausa, le estábamos hablando con Juan Martín sobre su historial y su participación con los estudiantes y cómo es que él ve el magisterio, cómo él usa su creatividad para también influenciar a esos jóvenes mentes que él tiene en su salón de clase en un lugar de tanta necesidad económica, porque son personas que muchos acaban de llegar al país, que tienen límites, recursos económicos y van a la escuela muchos. Yo me imaginaría que sé que es una escuela título 1 y que quiere decir que son, la mayoría de los estudiantes están bajo el nivel de pobreza, pero aparte de eso, muchos de ellos también reciben el almuerzo gratis, que eso sucede basado en el nivel de pobreza de los estudiantes. Y aquí tenemos a Juan Martín enseñando en esa escuela que es una joyita de nuestro sistema escolar. Y le estaba preguntando a él antes de la pausa que nos hablara un poquito sobre esta entidad, esta fundación que él creó, que todavía existe y están bien activos en nuestra comunidad, que se llama Compulsion Music Nove, algo así, o he acribillado el nombre por completo. A ver, explícame, Juan.
Well, while I was finishing my studies as a composer in college, me and a couple of friends who were also composers realized that it was difficult for young composers in our community to be able to get performances out. Because, ultimately, if you write a piece for an ensemble of performers, you need to pay someone to perform it, and that's expensive. It's not easy for students or even graduates to do that. So I was very fortunate that I was able to co-found with several friends in my class. We all came together and we were able to create a 501c3, a nonprofit called Compositum Musicae Novae, in Latin. And we used this foundation, this new organization, as a foundation for getting the arts out to the community. It started very small. It started with a performance in a church where we all got together and put some of our pieces and asked performers to come help. And little by little, we got grants from Dade County Cultural Affairs, from the Coral Gables Cultural Affairs departments. We got corporate donations, and little by little, it grew into very big shows where we were able to perform at the Coral Gables Museum, bring pieces from international composers even, and eventually involving all the arts. We would do each show with a gallery. We did each show with usually at least one piece of the language arts, maybe a poem. It might be a small piece of theater. We would have at least one choreographed piece with a dancer, and then we would have 4 or 5 pieces of music. My friends and co-founders elected me the first creative director and the first president of the organization, and I did that for the first 4 years. I was very fortunate because I learned an incredible amount putting together events, and also reaching out to the community through social media. We would create Instagram posts to introduce people to composers and artists, and write articles. So it was a lot of hard work, but a moment in my life I would never forget, because it completely changed the way I interact with music and the community, and it gave me an opportunity to share my music with many. So it's something I'm very grateful for having being a part of.
And it's a great talent to be able to create that, because basically you did it out of scratch, and to be able to convince people to lend you space, or to even charge you for the space, but to charge you minimal to be able to perform this music is just incredible. You're no longer associated with them, or are you still doing something? How are you working with this organization?
Well, after the 4 years, I retired from it to concentrate on teaching, because teaching definitely takes a big a big space of time to do. But I believe they are still working in the community, and still doing concerts. And when they can, I believe they do like to still reach out to schools. One of the things that the organization did very well, they would reach out to schools and do a concert where they would do music. They would give you the story of music all the way from the Renaissance to the present period, with period instruments and professional performers. So students would see the evolution of harmony and music over the span of 500-600 years. So it was an incredible thing that they would bring to schools, a very unique experience.
That is just unbelievable. Estamos hablando con Juan Martín, que es uno de los finalistas, si acabas de sintonizarnos, uno de los finalistas para el premio de Maestro del Año, que estamos muy orgullosos de poder tener la oportunidad de entrevistarlo y hablar con él antes de este evento, porque naturalmente uno se prepara para esto como lo hace para sus clases, para las obligaciones que uno tiene personales. Juan, déjame hacerte una pregunta. I'm sure that you have, of course, you had to complete an application. You had to meet with different people, like interviewing, and it's a process. As you get closer to this event, what are some of the things that you're worried about? What are some of the things that you have fear, or not fear, pero como tienes cierta preocupación en anticipación del día del evento? Tell me some of the things that you're feeling as you're getting ready to do this in a couple of weeks.
I guess it's a mix of several emotions. Excitement for the chance to win such a prestigious award and such an honor, among like so many amazing colleagues. I have a lot of really incredible colleagues, especially the ones that I work with in the music department from Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So being recognized like this it's an incredible honor. So I'm excited. I'm also nervous because while I have hosted many concerts, it does feel strange to receive so many congratulations, and to get all the attention. I'm usually the type of person who's very to myself. I just do the things I have to do. So it is something to get used to have so many congratulations and so many people being proud of you and reaching out to you. So I think that's the part that makes me the most nervous, is getting used to all the new attention that comes with the award. That's very new to me.
But I'm sure you'll be fine. I am sure you're going to be fine. Señor Martín, una pregunta, because you just reminded me when you were talking about people that you know from music in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. You mentioned en la solicitud, in the paperwork that you had to submit to the district para poder ser el finalista, you mentioned that there are two people. I think it was someone from Kensington Park and someone from Citrus Grove, si no me equivoco, que ya está retirado la persona, que fueron instrumental in your path as a music teacher, in this career as an educator. Háblame un poquito de esas personas que fueron tan importantes en tu vida para llegar a donde estás ahora y donde vas a seguir.
Oh, I have many. I think one of them who recently passed away, her name is Miss Molinari. She was my first piano teacher. She taught me for many, many years, over a dozen years. And she passed away actually a few months ago. She was a super passionate music educator, super. She left me all her books. She left me all her tools. She had given them to me years ago. But she was always like a constant support for sharing music with others. I was also lucky that when I got to Kensington, that one of the music teachers that was there while I was there was still there. He is still there right now, Mr. Gutchell. So when I got there, someone I knew for over 20 years, and he was happy to guide me and help me um, get started because as a music teacher, um, they kind of just throw you in. You you get to work and you say, all right, here you go. Here's a classroom, and there isn't a lot of training on how to figure it out unless you studied music education in particular. So he guided me a lot. And that year, as many music teachers do, I was at two schools. Sometimes we have to go to a school a few days a week and another one. And I was fortunate that the teacher at Citrus was also another very experienced teacher, Dr. Charles, a musicologist. And he gave me a lot of advice too. And he sat down and he was so patient and in helping me get through. So I've been very fortunate to meet people who had, 10 times the experience I have, who were willing to impart knowledge on me and to guide me and to give me, the tools to grow. And also, I would say that the department that we have for music in Miami-Dade County Public Schools in general, the people who guide us there and create our workshops are really, really good. They are incredible. Every time I go to the workshops, I'm blown away by my colleagues and how talented they are. And they're always willing to share. Every time I go and I learn so much from them, it helps. I have something to bring back to my students.
Yeah, that's I'm a former teacher myself. And I know exactly when you're talking about de que estabas en dos escuelas. I think eso se llama maestro itinerario, de itinerant teacher.
Yes.
No de itinerario, pero como ambulante, ¿no? You go to a school, entonces está un ratico ahí y después vas a la otra. Y basically sometimes cuando tú estás empezando a organizar tu día, ya it's time for you to go to the next one. So you're never here, and you're never there, you're never there, you're never here. You're just running around. Eso siempre lo hacen mucho con las áreas especiales como música, arte. Si no hay suficiente estudiantes en una escuela, pues te tienen. Yo conozco maestros que ahora no creo que tanto, pero hace años que en español que tenían hasta 3 escuelas itinerant teaching, y era de un lugar para otro, y es bien difícil de hacer y hay que ser bien organizado. Y otra cosa que mencionaste que me impresionó también es lo que tú dices, que como maestro de música, en realidad tú no tienes un mentor, you don't have a mentor, you don't have a support, porque tú eres el único que enseña música en ese lugar. No es como English or math or science, where there's por lo menos en cada grado hay un maestro, o por lo menos en cada materia hay 2 o 3 maestros. So it's difficult to find somebody else in your same area que te pueda ayudar con eso. How do you do in your first year to get adjusted? How do you work that out? Para ver qué es lo que tenía que hacer primero, qué es lo que tenía que hacer después. ¿Cómo hiciste eso?
Well, I was lucky that I was at 2 big schools. Kensington Park and Citrus Grove are very large elementaries. So since I was the second teacher at both, I got to learn from the principal teacher at Kensington and the principal teacher at Citrus. So in that way, I was fortunate. I was also fortunate that they were both very experienced. I was coming into people who had over 20 years experience teaching elementary music, both of them. So they had seen everything that you can imagine over the span of 20 years, and they were able to prepare me. To be honest, when it first happened, I was quite afraid because I thought I had been hired only at Kensington, and I showed up the first day and I see my schedule at another school as well. And I said, oh, a part of me was, I said, wow, am I going to teach middle school over there? I was uncertain about what the challenges were going to be. And it ended up being an incredible blessing because when I went to Citrus, the administration over there observed me teaching, and they really loved my style and how I related to the students. And that led to eventually me being able to get to Citrus and blossoming in the current role that I have.
Incredible. So, Mr. Martin, I'm trying to wrap up in a few minutes, pero antes de terminar, I don't know if they've told you, but there are a couple of things. Hay una organización que is comprised of all of the teachers, former teacher of the year, se llama the Coalition. Have you heard of the Coalition? No?
I'm not sure.
There's the teachers of the years from previous years formaron una organización que se llama the Teachers Coalition, and they have probably on Friday you're going to meet with them, and they will assign you. They'll assign you a toy, Teacher of the Year toy, and you will have your toy. El toy te va a ocupar de todo para ti. Te va a ayudar el día del evento, que si alguien de tu familia no tiene dónde sentarse, ellos te resuelven eso. Si tú necesitas algo que se te perdió un botón, ellos te buscan el botón. Y si no sabes lo que tú tienes que hacer, ellos te explican. Probablemente el viernes ellos se reúnan contigo, porque ellos siempre lo hacen en el Teachers Work Day, que es un poquito antes de la fecha del evento. Y otra cosa que ellos te ayudan, I don't know if you know, pero el maestro que gana tiene que dar un discurso. Do you know about the speech?
Well, I was told that I had to prepare an acceptance speech. So I'm working on that now. I'm preparing my first acceptance speech ever. So I'm excited about that.
I know that you're preparing it, that you're not, you don't have it yet.
Yes.
Ready. Pero ¿me podría dar una idea de qué es lo que, más o menos, cuáles son las cositas de highlights that you think you're going to touch on en ese speech, en ese discurso?
That's a good question. I think I would like to thank, if I do get the opportunity to win, I would like to thank those who have had a great influence on me. Like we just spoke about, some of the teachers who really took their time. I would like to probably thank the administrations that I've had that have really given me an opportunity to be very free and experimental in my lessons, allowing me to do something like the time machine. And of course, thank my family, who has supported me working many long weekends. My wife, especially, working on the time machine to make it a reality. And I think in a weird way, I would like to thank the many composers that inspired me throughout my life to upkeep this passion, people who I've never met, but touch me very greatly.
Let me ask you something. Now that you mentioned that, you talked about, all these people. Is there anybody in your family that was musically inclined, or you just fell into music like como by accident, or just how did you come into music, into piano? You said you had a teacher that for many, many years, piano teacher. How do you happen to slide into this?
Well, there are a lot of musical people in my family, but only in my generation. The generation before me, my uncle played some trumpet in high school. My dad, I think, played a little bit too, but they were never very serious musicians. But my cousins both went to school for music. So my generation of my family, all of us are music majors. I think it's just something we all fell in love with. They studied vocal music. I studied composition. And that's always a way that we related to each other. And I think as a kid, I was attracted to it because I was fascinated by the idea of creating something from scratch. That's always been something I find very beautiful, whether somebody writing a book, a painting, writing a piece of music, writing a story, anything. I was just fascinated by the idea of being able to create things ever since I was a child.
Wow. Estamos hablando con Juan Martín, uno de los 4 finalistas del premio del Maestro del Año en Miami-Dade County Public Schools, y siempre se hace un año anterior. Al principio explicamos por qué, porque hay que preparar a la persona para que vaya al estado y ahí se presente también como concursante, y después para el evento que es a nivel nacional, que es el año próximo, pues por eso se llama Maestro del Año 2025, porque aunque es escogido este año, tiene un año entero para servir su reinado, como aquel que dice. Y le agradecemos mucho al señor Martín por habernos dedicado este rato hoy, que es un día tan importante para él, porque es su único día libre esta semana, pero agradecemos mucho que haya venido y haya participado en el show de la doctora Gemma para darnos esa información y para aprender a conocer un poquito más sobre él. Gracias, Juan, que tengas un buen día y nos vemos pronto, y te deseamos la mejor suerte el día del evento.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
La Meca Radio presentó el show de Gemma Carrillo. Gracias por la atención prestada, amigos, y hasta la próxima.